I'm Jim Knight, co-founder of the Instructional Coaching Group, and you're listening to Coaching Conversations, where I talk with coaching experts from around the world so that all of us can learn better ways to make an unmistakably positive impact on the people around us.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Coaching Questions Show on the Coaching Conversations podcast with Jim Knight. This show is for everyone who calls the Instructional Coaching Group home for all your instructional coaching content. These episodes are designed for everyone who desires to think and learn alongside Jim and myself as you continue to make an impact with all the great work you do. I'm Jessica Wise, a member of our ICG consultant team. And today's episode explores something that's on a lot of people's minds right now here in the US, which is a launch to the new school year as an instructional coach. So we've got you covered with all things getting back into the groove for the next school season. And once our Q&A has come to a close, we'll have an epilogue or a final note at the end of the show with 2 questions to wrap up our discussion before we sign off. So on with the show.
On with the show. Hey, Jessica, how are you?
I'm well. It's Friday afternoon. We've got a night of baseball ahead of us, so it's all good. What about you?
Tomorrow is a big wedding. Kristen, who's works for our wonderful B Corp, the Instructional Coaching Group, her son is getting married, and so that's the big deal. I'm hoping it's not 200 degrees, so we'll see. I've decided that if you go to a wedding, if you wear a tie, you can wear blue jeans. Those are my rules.
I like it.
So I think I'll go with I'll wear a blazer and a white shirt and a tie and blue jeans because it's going to be hot. I don't want to like a suit. Goodness.
Yeah.
But I think it's disrespectful to wear jeans and no tie. I think the respectful approach for men is to wear jeans and a tie. At least wear a tie if you're going to wear jeans.
What about one of those fans to wear around your neck to cool you off through the wedding?
I would not do that, but I would not be surprised if the love of my life would do that. So that's quite possible that Jenny will be wearing she will have her little pink fan nearby, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all the rave now.
It's an accessory that she carries with her everywhere.
Oh, I think it's genius. I've seen many people around the state of Georgia wearing those, just in the grocery, in their car, anywhere.
Well, hers is a little handheld fan.
Oh, okay. Not the necklace type.
No, I gave her the necklace, but she's not so sold on those. She's more the handheld.
I see. Well, Jim, I feel like we haven't talked in so long. I think you're in your Globetrotter era. I was trying to think of a fun way to say it. What do you think of that?
It's definitely been crazy travel in the last, from say May 1st to now. It's the last 2 months, 4 continents. So if I got it right, and I don't know how many countries. Yeah, it's been crazy, but it's wonderful. And every time, every stop, I'm encouraged and hopeful because I work with such wonderful people. It's always a gift to work with the people in the Institute. It sounds like rhetoric, but it's not. I mean, everywhere I went, it was awesome people, deeply dedicated to what they didn't matter if we were in China or Perth, Australia, or wherever it was. What we were doing was people that really wanted to be there, and they're really dedicated to doing what can I do to reach kids more effectively. So it's super, it wears you out, but it's super gratifying at the same time. And it's so cool to see instructional coaching happening around the world. It's kind of a fun thing.
What's been a highlight from all the travels?
I think it's just watching, the way our institutes work is watching the community develop, emerge while we're together. And so you have a group of people together, even in 2 days, but especially with the 5-day institutes, by the end of the 5th day, they're close-knit group, and there's a lot of opportunity for opening up and sharing. And, I just feel like it's a privilege to be a part of that community growth. It's kind of like you create the conditions and away it goes. So I'm always fun to set back and let it happen.
Oh, that's so wonderful. You sent me a video. Well, you must have been in Australia, I think, and I got to talk to one of our colleagues over in Australia. That was really cool. Now I'm interested though, Jim. So you talked about the highlight of people. What about food? Did you eat some good food?
I did in Tokyo. Yeah, I had and in Dubai. I took my friend Chanel because our partnership could be shifting a little bit. I hope not, but we're trying to figure out how to work together. But so just in case we went out to this super fancy Indian restaurant, and Chanel's from New Delhi. So it was wonderful. Such a great night. So that was great. And then in Tokyo, you know that Netflix documentary, the Dreams of Sushi documentary. I forget what it's called, but I went to that place. So that was, and I just happened to. It was just luck, I just happened to find it and ended up there. So it was great. But I'm not a huge sushi person, but that place was very cool, very very precise. I once asked this sushi guy, "How long did it take you to figure out what knife you wanted to use?" And he said 10 years. Like it's such a precise, everything they do is so precise and careful and thought through and intentional. So it's wonderful to be around something like that.
Okay, are you ready to jump in?
Let's go.
Let's go. Let's take off. And if you're listening to your podcast without seeing the video, you should watch on YouTube because Jim and I are twinning today.
Yes.
Accidentally, but we're twinning today. So I'm very excited. We've styled our hair the same way. Joking. We have the same. Anyway, I couldn't resist.
Got eye patches over the same eyes,
Right.
all those
These
things.
mohawks are a big hit. People
Right.
listening are anxiously pulling up YouTube.
Both got Taylor Swift t-shirts on. It's pretty cool.
That's right. Well, Jim, in our coaching for achievement workshop that we do in our institutes, you talk about the way students learn and what students learn, and you talk about knowledge, skills, and big ideas. And so you had this really great idea. I'm excited about it that we should do our podcast that way for this topic of launching a new year as an instructional coach. So, first, Jim, let's start with what knowledge do coaches need as they prepare for a new school year?
That's such a great question. And I think that it's important to say that all these things we're going to talk about are knowledge. So there's procedural knowledge, there's content knowledge, and there's conceptual knowledge, big ideas. And so just in terms of content knowledge, I think coaches have to have expertise. And one thing, and I'll probably mention this again, but I really think it's important that coaches are aware of, and coaching programs are built around the 7 success factors for instructional coaching. So, we have a free assessment people can get where they can go and they can assess where they are with respect to all the 7 success factors. I would say all those things need to be in place. And to do that assessment and to honestly reflect on how's it going, because it's going to be really hard to be successful if you don't know how to do the impact cycle. And if you don't have an understanding of a teaching strategies and how to gather data, because gathering data is the way you set goals. But for content knowledge, and then all the other things too about the way you communicate and lead and so forth, the content knowledge, I would say that's probably primarily what we will call expertise. And there's 2 things I think that are critical for expertise, 2 of those success factors. And one of them is gathering data. You need to know how to gather data because you need to be able to figure out where you are. Data helps you see things you couldn't otherwise see. And we break that down into data for engagement and for achievement. And then you need to be able to set goals. And so that data is going to help you set goals. And then you need to be able to monitor progress. So data is going to be critical. It's going to be hard to be a coach and not gather data because you won't see some things without the filters that data gives you. And you won't feel confident setting goals because you don't have actually fairly powerful measurable outcomes. So our way of doing that is the book Data Rules, but there's lots of other ways of accessing that data, I'm sure. But data is critical. Second thing is teaching practices. And so you need to know, once you set the goal, how are we going to get there? I always say that coaching is about where am I now, where I want to get to, how am I going to get there? Data tells you where you are. It tells you where you want to get to. It helps you monitor progress. But getting there, you need the teaching strategies. And so we would say you need some set of teaching practices. It could be based on John Hattie's work, although John, I think there's 10 million visible learning books now, but his initial work on visible learning really just identifies the areas that are important. Second thing, you could look at somebody like Brian Goodwin's work. I have a book called High Impact Instruction. But the key thing is to have strategies that help teachers hit their goals and then create a playbook. We have this book called Instructional Playbook that helps people figure out how to get really clear on what the strategy is so they can explain it clearly, so they can get it clearly explained. And it's not just knowing, but it's being able to take that knowledge and translate it into practice. So, when we look at Julie Stern's work, she talks about acquisition of knowledge, transfer of the knowledge. And the coaches have to make sure the teachers aren't just acquiring the knowledge, but they're actually using it. That's where the playbook comes in. The playbook helps people translate that knowledge into practice. No translation, no change in what happens with kids. You have to learn it, But after you learn it, then you have to really make it happen. And making it happen, it probably becomes more alive then. But what would you say? What is the knowledge you've learned in your experience, Dr. Wise, on what coaches need to know?
Well, thank you for that, Jim. And by the way, we'll attach to this show the survey that everyone can take that you mentioned for the success factors so that people can maybe give that a try.
I was
But
hoping you'd say that.
yeah, it was a nice setup there. So I was thinking about those 7 success factors, but before I even knew about those 7 success factors when I was a school coach, one thing that I did is ask my principal what she's already communicated about coaching to people in the school. I think it was really important to me to know how has coaching been communicated? Have there been any meetings about what coaching will look like? Because when I was given the role of the coach, it was brand new. So I wondered what conversations had happened. What did the role look like? What did she foresee me doing? And then how did teachers, what did they hear? How did they expect to experience coaching? It was also important that I understood their experience with coaching before. Have you ever worked with someone to reflect on your practice? What was that like for you? And then when I started working with multiple schools, we would always get to know what was it like to be coached for someone who isn't in your school? So if I'm a visitor to your school and I'm not on the staff, what is that going to be like for you? Like it was very important for me to understand the relationship with people from the coach and the teacher, and then the coach and the leadership or the leadership team. That was something that was important to me. And it's on my mind too, that system support idea. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that's a very good point. You need to understand where people are and what's going on around them. And I mean, the more you can understand about how the system works, that's really valuable insight. I think. I mean, as a coach, if you know what your principal really wants to see happen, and you can help her accomplish those goals, then you and your principal become really, really good partners. But if you're helping the principal do her job, it's going to make a big difference. If you and the principal are at loggerheads and you're trying to talk her into stuff and she doesn't want to do it, and then it's going to be a lot more difficult. But I think understanding that is really, but not just that, but the whole system.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, Jim, you mentioned ideas like data and teaching strategies. So that's that content knowledge that's helpful for coaches to have. What are some skills that are important for them to have?
Yeah. So the first part, that's content knowledge. The coach needs to know about teaching practices. They need to know they need to know about data so they can see things. And in particular, there's a couple chapters in the impact or in data rules. The chapter that focuses on engagement, the chapter that focuses on achievement. Just those two chapters are really critical. But I think skills, you need to understand the process of coaching,
Mm.
what kind of questions to ask. You need to understand the impact cycle and how to move through the impact cycle. You should understand it and do it. For me, and acquisition and translating the idea into practice is what it's all about. And there's a lot of coaches who can tell you what the impact cycle is, but they might not actually be doing every piece of it. And you can adapt it if you want, but I wouldn't adapt it because I don't understand it. I want to know it deeply before I make any kind of modifications or any significant modifications. But then there's the things around skills, and so I think and beliefs. We'll come back to the beliefs when we talk about concepts, but I think a coach has to be a really good listener. They have to ask really good questions. And these things might seem like cliches, but you know that Malcolm Gladwell thing about 10,000 hours, if you do 10,000 hours, and then it's kind of been rebuked since then? Well, if that was true, we should all be just awesome listeners and questioners. So it's clearly not true because we aren't. You ask leaders or you ask teachers what they wish their leaders did better, and almost always listening comes up on the list. And listening's the yin for the yang of questioning. Good questions open up good listening. And so I think developing those skills are really, really critical. The way you listen, the way you ask questions. I would say it's essential. You really want to be a good coach. You have to master the skill of being a good listener and you have to recognize that coaching is a managed conversation. You're managing the process. You're also managing yourself to act in a way that makes you more effective. Just like when you teach, to some extent, there's a little bit of acting involved. You're not talking to your students the way you would talk to your, spouse or whatever. And I think coaching's a little bit like that. When you sit down to do the coaching conversation, you have to kick in and say, this is a different kind of conversation. This is one where I listen really effectively. I love what Claudia Owad said in our group when we were doing the CAP program. She said, this is your time. This is for you. And I think we have to learn how to do that to make sure it is their time and that it's for them. What's your thoughts?
That's good. Well, what you just said actually, so I'm reading this book, Coaching A to Z, and I hope Hasan is
Oh,
listening.
well said. I hope she hears you say that.
Yes,
That's good.
she heard me say Z because that's important. But what you just said about listening made me think about what she wrote about we need to change the way we listen differently when we're in coaching conversations. And that sounds like a lot of wow, what you just said. It's something I was thinking of, Jim, for an essential skill is how to reflect. So when I was a new coach and I was reading books, trying to understand what it was that I was doing, I knew it was important to reflect. As a teacher, I did it. But in the books, it said take time to reflect. So after coaching conversations or after something I did as a coach, I'd sit down and say, yeah, I think it went well. But I didn't actually reflect in the way that I reflect now. So you helped me understand video is so powerful. So what I started doing was recording all of my conversations, whether it was with a team, an individual, even if it was, I think I've said this before, just planning, I'd record. How much time am I spending? Am I on task? So that really changed the game for me. So a skill coaches might need as they start a school year or just something to help people is how does it what does it look like to reflect and how does that really help us as coaches?
One other skill is I love that skill. And I think you're absolutely correct. Basically, what you're saying, you have to be a learner. You have to be looking at how you can learn. But I think another skill, and it's one that's really difficult, is to be able to have dialogical explanations. This is for an instructional coach, not for a facilitative coach. But I have to be able to explain things really clearly.
Mhm.
That's part A. But then I have to explain them in a way that the other person is able to say yes or no to everything I'm explaining. Because the truth is, they're going to say yes or no. So I need to make it safe for them to say, well, I don't really want to do it like that. I kind of like to do it like this. But they can't do that unless my explanation's clear. And I think my explanations are much clearer than they are when I listen to it on a recording. And I practice this where I actually coached, not coach, but I explained some strategies to Jenny just to see how clear I was using a checklist. I wasn't that clear. And so I think to record yourself with your explanations, practice. Don't underestimate how important it is to be extremely clear. But at the same time, in your clarity, you say, now tell me about how you might want to modify this to make it work for you. Do you want to do it like this? The person they should be processing with you. And it's almost like a formative assessment because if they just say, yeah, I'm sure that's great. Is it in the book somewhere? They're not getting it. In order for them to say yes or no, they have to hear you and understand it to do that. So I think dialogical explanations, another big and important skill, maybe underrated skill for instructional coaches, because there's two critical parts, the dialogical part and the clarity of the explanation.
Mhm. And in our institute and many workshops, we say to be precise and provisional. And I think that's hard to do at first. So it takes practice and then it takes reflection. And if you have a video of what it looks like and sounds like for you to attempt to be precise and provisional in your conversations, that can help you grow too. And that's certainly a skill that made a big difference for me. Is I thought I was being really clear, and I also thought I was positioning my partners as the decision makers. I was not. So when I watched video, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not giving them any choice. I'm just telling them what to do in their classroom. And that's why they're not talking as much. And then I need to talk less. And when I talk less, I should ask questions. So the video really made a big difference for me.
And part of the provisionality is knowing that it's still okay to share what you think. You just have to share it in a way that doesn't tell the person what to do.
Mhm.
And so you just say, now you're going to do what you're going to do. You know your kids better than me. You know what works for you. But when you're saying that, I'm wondering about this. What are your thoughts about this? So they know they're okay saying what they think. They don't have to agree with you. They don't have to comply. They're 100% safe disagreeing because I want to hear what's on their minds. I don't want them to pretend they're going to do something and do something else. So I don't help the person sitting on my hands and not sharing what I think, but I also don't help them by telling them this is what you should do, doggone it, and you better do it, and then engendering resistance. So it's figuring out the way in which I can, and the other part of it is just to recognize as Michael Bungay Stanier says, we think our advice is way better than it is. We think other people want it way more than they do. They don't really probably want it. They're probably not hearing it. We're probably exaggerating. We have self-serving bias. We think what we have to say is like God's gift to teachers. Just to say, this is complex work. Let's figure it out together. Here's an idea. That dialogical part is really, really critical.
Jim, a few minutes ago, you said that beliefs also play a role in what coaches can do or know or understand as they start a school year. So I wonder if we could circle back to that. What are some big ideas or that conceptual knowledge that can help prepare for the year ahead?
Yeah, I had to catch myself. I was always going to talk, almost going to talk about that. And I'm like, no, wait,
That's
that comes
not yet.
later.
Yeah.
So, all right. So part of what I'm doing when I'm working from what we call the partnership approach is I genuinely see you. I value you. I know you have a brain. I want us to engage as equals. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to work with you. This is, besides which, it's your class. So I'm helping you with your class. You should be the one who makes these decisions. And it doesn't mean I silence myself. It doesn't mean I don't share ideas. I could share lots of things if they're helpful, but I only share it if it helps you think more effectively. So when it's helpful, I'll share those ideas. And then, part of that is that I want you to speak a lot. So I want you to know that I think your voice is important and that I come from a place of genuine benevolence and an openness to hearing your opinions. And, I communicate, I have faith in you. And so all those partnership principles, they all lay that all out. I expect to learn from you. I don't think um, I don't think just because you're a new teacher, you don't have something to teach me. I go in expecting to teach you. And I think sometimes people struggle to give up the power. I'm going to come in and tell you what you did right and what you did wrong. But the assumption there's only one right answer, and I happen to have it, and so I'm now going to tell it to me, it's inconsistent with reality. The fact is, it's complicated. I could be wrong. I'm a brain, you're a brain. Let's figure it out together. I think that's the concept. We call that the partnership principles, and we have these principles of quality, choice, voice, dialogue, reflection, praxis, reciprocity. And I think going deep into those principles, and they're a vision to strive for, not something you just do. But you're probably going to be more effective if you really listen to the other person. You're probably going to be more effective if you expect to learn from the people you work with. You'll probably be more effective at leading change if you let go of the advice trap and listen more and come from a place of curiosity rather than control. So to me, that's the big ideas. The big ideas are, at the heart of it is, I don't think I'm better than you. I expect to learn from you.
Mhm. That's great, Jim. When I was a part of the coaching program in the state of Georgia, we used your reflection questions for the partnership principles from the definitive guide to reflect after we would have coaching practice in our sessions. And one particular coach who I was coaching at that time came up to me after we had a coaching practice and said, Jessica, I'm doing all these things, but I'm still just making no progress with this teacher that I'm coaching right now. I just don't understand what's going on. I'm doing all these things. So I said, well, that's great, but I wonder what it looks like when you're doing all these things with her. So we decided to record her next conversation with her teacher. And so she set up her phone, she recorded the conversation with her teacher. We watched it back together. And the entire time, this person, the coach, had all the right things to say. And she did a beautiful job of asking questions. She made space for the teacher to share her ideas. But as we watched, the coach sat back with her arms crossed. So even though she was asking great questions, even though she was listening and she was making space for the teacher to reflect, her nonverbals were in misalignment with
Mm.
what she was saying. So it really took her by surprise to say, well, I thought I was doing all these things, but a lot of the way that she was, her way of being, didn't really communicate that she wanted to hear what the teacher had to say. So I go back to video is so powerful as a way to audit, are we actually embodying these partnership principles effectively? What do you think, Jim?
I think that's great. And it sounds like what she was doing, and she was doing all the right things, but it wasn't coming from the right place. So the
Right.
way of being was off, even though she was doing everything technically. If your heart's not in it, if you don't think the other person can teach you something, if you
Mhm.
don't think they're just as important as you, no matter what you do, people will pick up on it and it's going to make it harder, I think.
That's
But
right.
not only that, people have great ideas. Why would I want to limit myself to my one idea? Let's figure it out together. Let's come up with a bunch and work together. Again, it doesn't mean you don't have expertise, you don't share things. If If you got something useful, like if I got a teacher who wants to learn about formative assessment, and I've worked with Rick Stiggins for 2 years and read everything he's done, it'd be silly for me not to share those ideas. I just don't assume that my right answer is necessarily that person's right answer. The right answer is what helps kids be more engaged or helps kids learn more. That's the right answer.
Mm. Yes. Well, Jim, one thing we haven't talked about yet is well being. And right now, I'm in the CAP program, the coaching accreditation program, and I get to listen to Christian and Claudia talk about many things coaching. And one of them that we've recently discussed is well being. So it left me thinking about well being for a coach and our coachees. So I'm curious to hear from you, what might coaches do to emotionally, mentally prepare for this next school year ahead of them?
Well, there's a big thing, and then there's a few little things, and I'd like to hear more about what Christian and Claudia have been teaching you. But the big thing is just treat yourself like a friend. Ann Hoffman was a consultant for ICG for a long time. I've known Ann for over 30 years. She said, if you're walking down the street and your friend falls down, your first reaction is, "Are you okay? No wonder you fell down. Look at how slippery this street is. It's no wonder everybody doesn't fall down. Are you sure you're all right?" Your whole reaction is kindness and compassion and concern. If you fall down, it's like, what an idiot. I can't even walk down the street without even fall. Your first reaction is criticism. And so what Kristen Neff and others, but Kristen Neff in particular, who was at TLC a few years ago, what she says is, treat yourself the way you would treat your friend when they fall down. Treat yourself with compassion. She talks about self-compassion. Compassion is to see the other person, to see what their struggles are, and to come from a place of kindness and concern. Understanding, empathy, and concern would be the way I would see compassion. But I think there's a top two other things that I've been thinking about that I'm going to share, and then I'd love to turn it back to you. I forget who said this, and I don't want to guess at who it is, but he said, if you can only give 40% of 100%, and you give 40%, you gave 100%.
Um,
I like that quotation a lot because I think there's only so much I can do. I really think I should be doing all these other things. But if this is all I can do and I do all I can do, I did 100%. And I think that's just a nice way of thinking about, for me at least, a nice way of thinking about, I can only do 20% and I do 20%, I gave 100%. So I like that idea. You can only do what you can do. And just to acknowledge that. The second thing is just an idea I've been thinking about, and I haven't got it all fleshed out, but just for the heck of it. I think that a lot of the self-criticism we experience happens non-linguistically. We experience something, and that reminds us of some trauma or some bad experience we had as a child, some habit of tearing into ourselves. We don't even realize it's happening. It happens beneath the language, but it affects our confidence, it affects our self-esteem, our efficacy, and our emotional well-being. And so this thing happens, and we react in our hearts. We react like we're back 12 years old, but we don't really actually notice that it happened. We don't recognize the words. We just know we're not happy anymore with the situation. So I think to be looking for not just the words we use in our head, but how things can affect us, sublinguistic, for lack of, I don't know what the right term is, but underneath the words, I think that's really, really a critical thing, because I'm pretty good at talking myself out of things, but stuff happens and I don't even really notice it. And it's holding me, it's limiting my capacity to make a difference. But what did you hear from uh, Christian and Claudia, or anything else you'd like to share? This is a really important question, so I'd love to hear what you have to say.
I think so too. I'll start with what I've learned from you, and it's to give myself space. I'm not great at it. I'm still working on this, but to not stack my calendar so that I'm going from one thing to the next thing to the next thing. And then I end my day exhausted. I go home to my family, or I cook dinner or take them to sports, and I don't even have half of myself left to give. So for well-being for myself is space, which as I said, is a work in progress. But looking at my calendar and saying, okay, I have 3 client meetings today. As I'm planning a workshop, I have 3 days of facilitation. Where is a 30-minute block where I could sit down and read the book that I'm exploring right now, or just take a breath and skim my emails to make sure I haven't missed anything. So that's something that I'm doing for my own well-being, working on doing for my own well-being. And then Claudia and Christian, and we had a great Q&A actually with Dan Steele too in the coaching accreditation program. And one thing they talked about for other people is the relationship. So for well-being for a coach and a teacher, or a coach and a team, coach and a leader, is to invest in that relationship, to actually see them as a person, or if they're a parent, see them as a parent too, not just a teacher or not just a leader, to really see the whole person and make sure that we're taking care of that person, not just the educator. And then the other thing too is a pause. They talked about the power of the pause. That if you're not sure what your next question is in a coaching conversation, just pause. Or if you're not sure what your next step should be, just pause to give yourself time to collect your thoughts, to really sit in a moment with someone. And it's okay to do those things. So those are big ideas I'm reflecting on: are space, relationships, and the power of the pause.
So I want to know, did I teach you how to do that by example or non-example? Because I kind of feel like what you described, one thing stacked on the other, is kind of like the way I've lived my life for the last 2 months. So
Uh,
I don't know.
uh, the definitive guide taught me that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I believe in it. I believe in it. It's challenging though,
Yes.
especially when, you're trying to do good and, you got to do stuff. So it's a challenge.
Yeah. Well, Jim, to close out our show today, we have two final questions on
Okay. I've
this.
got one more thing. Sorry to
Oh,
interrupt. Um, So I did a presentation at the Austin Region 13 Instructional Coaching Conference, and I talked about these various sort of beliefs, and one of them is to be a believer. And I think this is important for well-being. Now, I'm not a scientist who studies it. Claudia and Christian know so much more about well-being than I do. But by being a believer, I think Nietzsche has this quote, something to the effect of, "Whatever comes along, I'm going to assume it's an opportunity for me to learn." So even when now I'm not dealing with the kind of profound sadness people are dealing with when they lose a family member, or just all the difficult, I've got everybody has challenges, but mine aren't as extreme as others. But in my challenges, I'm trying to say no matter what comes along, instead of it like, oh crap, what am I doing? I'm mad. I haven't got time for anymore. I'm trying to say what is the learning opportunity here? What can I get out of this? I think it's amore fate, like to love your fate no matter what your fate is. And that sometimes the greatest joys come on the other side of extreme hardship. When you go through struggles together with other people and you survive and you succeed, it's a pretty powerful thing. And I always believe the game's not over yet. You can always come back. But to have, to believe you can make, and then the other thing is to believe that inside the other person is good. If you can't believe that, maybe you say inside the other person wants to believe they're good. They want to be perceived as good. So when somebody does something that just burns my biscuit, as they say, um, I would like to figure out how could somebody think what they did is good when they did that. And if I can figure out where that is, I have a much better sense of understanding that person. And if I believe that deep inside that person, at the bare minimum, wants to be good, but I would say I think there is good deep inside everyone. It's just hard to see in some people, and for some people, it's buried deep. But to start from that faith, I think that helps with well-being too. To be a believer instead of to be judgmental and to. But I don't mean to diminish what people are going through, and they're. I've been on the edge of overwhelm. Everybody's been kind of overwhelmed, but I think sort of having the faith to get through can help you. Okay, back to our epilogue. Sorry.
no, I liked it, and the distraction was wonderful, or the interruption. And also there's some critter that keeps passing behind you outside. So I moved us into the epilogue because I thought, stay focused, Jessica. Don't watch the critter anymore. But it's happening. It's going back and forth, whatever it is. It's not your
What,
dog though.
what's it look like?
I don't know. I can't tell. It's going so fast, and I'm
I'm
trying
looking.
to keep looking at you, but
Could be our dog. Our dog. We have a little brown dog who goes fast. So now
um,
I'm not going to be focusing on you. I'm going to be looking out the window. Okay. All the more reason, if you're listening to this podcast, you should be
Yeah,
watching on YouTube this week.
yeah, watch it and see if you can figure out. That's the challenge of this episode is what
Right.
critter can sit anyway. But Jim, you're making me think as we talk about well-being about there almost it seems like there's the before a coaching conversation, during a coaching conversation, and after. There are ways that we can invest in well-being. So belief might be the before. So even before you walk into a conversation, believe that there's good in that person and other things too that you've mentioned. There are ways during the conversation that we can invest in well-being. From myself as a coach, I can use the power of the pause and not expect myself to have that next question ready to go. It's okay if it comes to me in a minute. And then after, I can invest in well-being. So it's just something I was processing along with watching for the critter as you were talking.
It's great.
Okay, so on to the epilogue. We have two final questions, Jim. You ready for that first one?
I'm ready. I have
Okay.
notes.
That first question is, how can our listeners lean on us here at the Instructional Coaching Group to support them?
So I think everything begins with that for instructional coaches, everything begins with that 7 success factors assessment. You need to do all 7 of those things to be successful. If I don't know how to gather data, how do I set goals? How do I see if I don't have teaching practices, how do we hit the goals? If I don't have a coaching cycle, I'm going to waste a lot of time. I'm not a good listener, good questioner. I need to work on those skills. If I don't lead myself and lead others effectively, it's going to be hard. And if I don't pass the vibe check, it's going to be, and I work in a system that doesn't support me. So to me, the first thing would be those 7 success factors. Doing a quick assessment, look in your email or wherever this is coming from, and it's going to give you a link to that assessment. And there's sort of 4 things our little group, the instructional coaching group, a B Corp does, just so people know what we mean by B Corp is. To become a B Corp, it's a really rigorous assessment to be certified as a force for good in society. You just look up B Corps. B Corp, I think it's bcorp.org, but you just type in B Corp and search around, you'll see it. But it means this is an organization that's dedicated to doing good. So I'm going to tell you about the things we do, but it's not like you should do this so we can make more money, because if we make more money, it's going to go back into doing what we can do for kids. That's why we're a B Corp. First thing is we have really great consultants like you, Jessica, who can come to your school. They can provide support. They can walk you through any or all of the 7 success factors. They can provide ongoing consulting. And so there's consultants who can come and work with you. Second thing is we have one-to-one coaching. So we can coach coaches, we can coach teachers, we can coach leaders setting up coaching programs. It's that idea of acquisition versus transfer. Even if people have come to the Institute in Kansas, or even if people have taken the virtual institute, to have someone to walk with you step by step through the whole thing, I think it's really, really helpful. You know, coaches need coaches just like teachers need coaches. So there's one-to-one coaching. And then if your district has cut coaching or you can't keep up with the demand and you have teachers who really need coaching, we've got people who can provide the coaching. Third thing is we have lots of virtual courses. And one of those virtual courses is the CAP program that you're in. So people can become a certified coach, certified by the European Mentoring and Coaching Council. But there's courses on the impact cycle. There's sometimes courses on supporting instructional coaching in your district. There's coaches on introduction to leadership coaching, which you and I do. There's the managing challenging conversations, many, many other things. But really, the essence of the stuff we offer is for schools to move forward, there needs to be great instructional coaching. There needs to be great leadership. And the most important leadership skill, in my opinion, is the coaching skill, the ability to unleash the potential of other people through taking a coaching approach to leadership. Then we have the institutes. We have a virtual institute online. We have the face-to-face institute in Kansas, and we have them around the world. This year, there's one in Bangkok. There's going to be one in Melbourne, Australia. There's going to be several in Lawrence, Kansas, Taylor Swift's favorite town, and other places as well. I'm sure we're looking for 2026 to do institutes around the world. And then Radical Learners is a place where people can take courses for pretty inexpensive. It's like $95, less than a university textbook, and you own it for life. And so if you're looking at those 7 success factors, you could take the course on the first 90 days of coaching, or you could take the course on better conversations to improve your coaching skills, your communication skills, or You could take the course on high impact teaching strategies to help you figure out what teaching strategies to use. So those are, I'm sure I've missed things, but when I think about what we do, we're here. Our mission is excellent instruction every day for every student in every class, everywhere. And everywhere is everywhere. It's Toronto and it's Topeka and it's Timbuktu. And every student is every gender, every kid with an ability or disability, every kid who has language issues, who's multilingual or whatever it might be, or has a learning disability, every kid who's living in poverty. And our goal is universally around the world, every student has great instruction every day. It's a ridiculous dream. It'll never happen in my lifetime, most likely. But until we get there, we're going to keep going. That's our goal. So that's my little speech about things we can do to help people out. Did I miss
I'm
something important?
inspired.
Are you inspired?
I'm very inspired. I think that was a very inspiring moment in our podcast. And there's a book too, the IC Toolkit. And I was thinking about this episode, Jim. I thought, what's an article that I could just tease here on the podcast to help people think, oh, that's a great way to keep going too. So the instructional coaching group can also support you through our books. And we have this wonderful, the IC Toolkit companion text to the definitive guide for instructional coaching. And in here, we talk about all 7 success factors that you've mentioned a few times, Jim. And I was reading the chapter on systems support because I was thinking about this episode, and we can prepare for the new year, but unless we have a partner, someone who can help us in the system to support instructional coaching, that's where we will really struggle. So there's an article in here called Hey Instructional Coach, What Do You Do? Where you talk about the 5 maxims of instructional coaching. I just really like that article. So, as for any coach out there listening, one way that you can build yourself up, prepare for that new year, or even collaborate with your leader in conversations is to get a copy of this book and read articles like that one. So, I was just really excited to share that.
You could Google it and find it for free too, but that's another story. We won't go
The article comes with 47 other articles, though.
That's right. That's right. That's right. What a deal. Well, that toolkit, the idea for that book, the genesis of it was that coaches have 36 weeks where they could be doing professional learning. Let's create something you could use every week, where every week you explore something and you deepen yourself around the 7 success factors. So that's what its intent is to help people really get good at those 7 success factors.
Yeah. And they can use this book maybe every week, every couple of weeks to say, I'm going to put 30 minutes on my calendar and learn, invest in my own professional development, or even get some ideas about what to take to my meeting with my leader, which brings me to our next question here in the epilogue, Jim. There are conditions when I was a coach that were put into place to help me be successful. So I went through a coaching program, and one of the non negotiables in that program was that we had a sponsor, a leader who in our school would support us in our efforts as we grew as instructional coaches. So I'm just curious to hear from you, what are some conditions that we can put in place in schools to help support the effort of the coach?
Yeah, well, it's really chapter 7 of the definitive guide lays that all out, but it's the idea that there's widespread understanding of what coaching is. And because, this person is going to help me reach more kids, going to make my life easier, see the good in me and remind me of it. If people understand that, it shouldn't be hard to find a coach. You're going to make my life easier and you do it in a way that affirms and validates me. That sounds good to me. So widespread understanding across the system, superintendent, principals, um, teachers and coaches, everybody understands what it is. And should be something you're proud of, that we are committed to continuous improvement. We're always trying to get better because we really believe in doing the best for kids. So I think that widespread understanding, making sure the coach has time to do coaching, getting really clear on what the coach can and can't do. And I will do this or I won't do that. And you say the coach is going to spend 70% of their time on the impact cycle, 10% of the time on continuous improvement and learning, only leaves 20% of their time. And so making sure the coach has the time to do that, clarity around policies around things like confidentiality, and increasingly things like what's our policy for using video in the classroom, for using artificial intelligence, getting clarity around policy that'll make things work for teachers. And then I think one thing that's really, really valuable is for leaders to coach and be coached. You learn a lot both ways. I think by being a coach, you learn a lot about how to interact with other people, especially if you're combining it with something like the CAP program, Introduction to Leadership Coaching. Um, but I think you don't just get the benefit of being coached, but being a coach might be even more valuable than actually being coached. But being coached gives you the perspective. And I think even teachers doing peer coaching, and writing about that the last couple of days. How do you set up peer coaching? Just as much rigor as you would set up instructional coaching, but to be coached and to coach really helps you understand its power, and it expands your skill set. So you become a better listener, a better questioner, and ultimately have a culture where it's focused on unleashing potential. That's what that's their go-to is, how can I help you be more and do what you want to do? Now, what did I miss? And what would you add around conditions?
Oh, I like that. The only thing I'd add is to ensure that the coach and the leader have time to meet.
Yes.
Maybe get the first few meetings scheduled just so that you have them on the calendar because that is such an important time. So I think that's it. You didn't miss anything out. So that's all I'd add.
What worked best for you in your system? What did your system do that was most helpful to you?
Mhm. But as a new coach, it was that the coaching program insisted that to have a coach in your school, they need a sponsor. They need someone to support their efforts. And that made all the difference because even if you knew coaching was important, to make sure that you validated that by meeting with the coach really confirmed that and affirmed the coach. The second thing is that we had coaches collaboration. So you could gather with other coaches, learn together, practice, read all the books, talk about the books. So those two things made a big difference for me.
So if someone's listening to this and they're a new coach and they haven't even started yet, or they just started, they're kind of overwhelmed, they're looking at everybody thinking, yeah, I don't have a class this year. What am I doing? What's their next step? What do you think their next step should be?
Mm. Reach out to us. But we are here for you. But I think their first next step would be to put some time on their calendar to start learning, because that would be a great thing to do to start off really well and then build a helpful habit. Is every week I'm going to read one of Jim's books or I'll do an activity from the IC Toolkit. I think that would be an easy way to start. That would also build their confidence. What about you?
Well, I do think the best thing they could do would be either to come to the Institute in Kansas or to take the virtual institute. I think there's there are knowledge, skills, and big ideas you need, and someone's got to teach them to you. And so that's where I would go. That would be my first stop. Second thing would be, if you can't do that, maybe take the first 90 days of coaching on the Radical Learners website. Um, but that's a short thing. That's like 5 hours of information versus 16 weeks, 3 hours a week, you
Yeah.
know? So, and then also when you take the virtual institute, I feel like this is just like a big advertisement. I don't mean it like that, but I mean, really, you want to succeed, you need to know. And so if you take that course, you're going to get 7 or 8 books. So you're going to get the data rules book, Better Conversations, the IC Toolkit, Instructional Playbook, High Impact Instruction, the Definitive Guide, the Impact Cycle, and you'll get walk through those tools. You need knowledge. It's a new job. And if you're just going to do one thing, I would say you need to understand, what's my coaching cycle going to be? And so I would say, if you can't, you don't have a budget to buy a book, then I would say figuring out what my coaching cycle is. Do a lot of research on the impact cycle, and get really clear on what you're going to do with teachers, and then be all about, I'm going to make that happen. And but if you can afford one book, I'd say it's the Definitive Guide. The Definitive Guide will give them the components, the key elements, and like consume it, or some other model of coaching. But you need to know what you're doing. You need to feel confident when you work with it. It fosters trust when you're credible and confident. And and I think getting that, like, what's my next step when knowing what you're going to do when you work with a teacher is probably the first thing you have to do. However, you can get to that.
Yeah. And sign up for the institute for sure.
Right.
Was there
Well,
any
we created the virtual institute because we say, what's the bare minimum a coach needs to do to flourish? That's why we have that institute. And then we did one in Kansas. It's like, we probably can't get people to stay for 2 weeks. So if we do 1 week, what can we cram into 1 week that's going to give them the most support to do what they have to do? And the number one feedback I've got on either one of the institutes is, um, oh, now I'm ready to go. Or I wish I'd heard this 3 years ago. Or people are they're ready to. They feel like I can do something now. I've been floundering now, but I know how to go. So I think that's the power of that. Whether it's a book study on the definitive guide or some other model, I think you need to know what you're doing. And so finding some form of professional learning, even if it's self-generated, that's going to help you know what you're doing. That's the first step.
Yeah. Is there anything else, Jim, before we close out today?
No, I like your black t-shirt. Great.
I like your t-shirt too, and that's a critter update. They have not returned. So,
Okay.
and
Well,
waiting on pins and needles. There you go.
I'll have to watch the
Yes.
what color was it?
It was just way too fast. It was a
Oh,
dark
it's
color. That's all I know.
probably our dog. Or do we have a dog that like he's like shot from a
Running
cannon?
laps, by the way.
That would be Buddy, who I wanted to call Buddy Holly because we got him Christmas Eve, but I was voted down. I still think it's the best name. All right, we better stop now. We're getting way too old.
Well, thank you for listening today, everyone. If you found today's episode helpful, it would help us if you liked or followed the podcast. You can leave us a rating or a comment so we can continue creating meaningful content just for you. Thank you. And until next time, go forth and lead great coaching conversations. And if you're gearing up for back to school, we wish you the absolute best year possible. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Take care, Jessica.
Have a good weekend, Jim. Bye.
You too.